The Marine piece is real, ladies and gentlemen. Oda is a part of the Admiral Agenda. What a week. We have so much to talk about today. First and foremost, I want to say we got a huge reveal about Kizaru being the one to feed Luffy. I talk about all this in my previous video, so check that out if you want the discussion for that. We're not going to talk about it here. There will be some more Kizaru information though toward the end of the video. First and foremost though, we're going to start off with Garp. Absolute confirmation that Garp is a Conqueror's Haki user in his vivre card. This is something that a lot of fans are not going to be surprised by. We should have expected this. It should have been common sense, but there were select few that did not believe it, and we're going to hold firm on the position until it's fully spoon-fed to you. He does not have it. So with that being said, that debate can finally be put to rest. He 100% has Conqueror's Haki highlighted here. Now with Garp, we also have more information in his vivre card, which a lot of fans, again, opposing the Marine Agenda, opposing the Admiral Agenda, are not going to like. It stated that following the Paramount War, rumors swirled that this legendary Marine would step down from the front lines. However, far from fading, he became even more active and determined in enforcing his version of justice. Garp's justice is simply my justice. Now he vigorously trains the young Marines who will lead the Navy's future, like Kobe and Helmeppo, and is greatly respected by the younger sword members. Of course, his strength remains intact, having once pushed even Roger to his limits. His relentless training over the years allows him to instill fear in pirates everywhere, even today. Ton to unpack there. For one, this corroborates everything we talked about Garp, Whitebeard, a lot of these older legends retaining strength. Now, that's not going to be the case for every old man in One Piece. People can come up with examples, but for these guys in the upper echelon, it seems to remain a theme, and Oda specifically singled these guys out, showing them in his SBS. The SBS claims that Oda did not like the idea of old men becoming irrelevant, losing their strength, so he made a concerted effort to make them maintain their strength. Whitebeard and Data Book Yellow is also stated to retain his strength. Now, a lot of people have a lot of problems with this because they just don't understand this concept and they just don't think that it makes a lot of sense. But I will say that, unfortunately, in a debate sense, now with this again, and with the fact that in the actual manga, through the flashback, you have a metric to gauge Garp's strength through the Aokiji flashback, as you see that Aokiji's sound correlating to his strength progression and Garp's remains the same throughout all the decades that pass. You can firmly say confidently in a debate that Garp has retained his strength. Now, obviously, if you want to get into the semantics of what a prime is, you can go there, but at best, you're never going to be able to get past a marginal decline, if anything, and that's just being generous. Some people aren't going to take that and be happy with it, but it's just the facts at this point. One thing you have to understand is that it's not really supposed to make sense from a logical standpoint in our real world, because that's Oda's intention. Oda's intention was to go against the norm of old men getting weaker. That's the whole point of what his SBS means. So when you look at it with that kind of context, it makes far more sense, especially considering that Garp is actively training, and with what's stated in this, it's almost as if he's more resolved than ever, because he's extremely focused on training the new gen, extremely focused on instilling these great lessons to them. I'm gonna address this because I know somebody's gonna bring it up in regards to Garp's strength being maintained. He does make a claim 2 times in the manga that he basically thinks his power has declined. Now, the first statement that says the cannonballs fly half as fast as they used to, and the second statement that says he thinks he's losing his edge, are both actually wrong. The raw kanji basically just says he thinks he's declined for both, so it's almost like it's a callback in Hachinosu to what he said in Water 7. Now, the context in the Water 7 one is funny anyway, because he's throwing the cannonballs at Luffy. He's obviously not going to capture Luffy, and in both it's comedic relief because there's heavy devastation that takes place, like with one cannonball with his bare hands, as Sanji says, and then in Hachinosu you see clear comedic relief with the people reacting to the impact of the city being leveled and everything. So there's a couple interpretations you could take. First and foremost, I do want to say that in a debate sense, trying to use these things to contradict the other statements isn't gonna work, and here's why. Usually manga would always trump all, but you have to look at the quality of the statement. So even though this is Garp making a claim about his own strength, it is still a knowledge claim, which is very loosely based. So getting very technical in it, if you were going against a skilled debater, they would be technical about how would Garp know the specifics of the power that he once had versus now. It's very plausible that you could believe you were a certain level of strength, and that's not reality based on just memories, reminiscing on your heyday. Also, what is he comparing it to? Were the variables that he was punching at the time or throwing at the time the exact same? Is the distance the exact same? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, where you can get super technical into it, like, oh, what are the buildings? Like, you could get really fucking nitpicky. I'm not doing that here. I'll say that the interpretation to take that makes the most sense, that I think would appease most people, and that I kind of alluded to, is that you could come to a conclusion that there is a prime level of strength for Garp. And semantically, because prime, you can't have a prime that lasts your whole life. A prime is the peak of your life. He can't maintain that forever. So it's fair to say that there's some diminishment. It's just not a significant enough portion to where it's relevant to these discussions, where it's not noticeable when you get a visual metric showcasing his power over time. It doesn't constitute him losing a tier of power or dropping off by any significant means. It would be marginal at best. That's the thing. Because there's no quantification for it, it really is irrelevant to discussions, especially with all the evidence I've shown. So I'm not trying to sit here and champion that I don't think he's lost any strength whatsoever, but when we talk about it, it's more so that it's not anything significant. So it's not like Garp would go from Currytown Luffy level to Gear 5 Luffy level. It's not like that drastic of a jump. You could make a claim like if two characters were highly relative, that could be an argument where it's like, okay, they're 100% equal, all things considered. So I'm gonna give it to this character in their prime. But as far as the Aokiji Garp one goes, that wouldn't be the case because of how much Aokiji's holding back and the confliction that is present, which I touch on all in my Aokiji Garp video. So I hope that clears it up. Also, in that paragraph, it states, one's pushed Roger to his limits, or there's another translation that says like cornered Roger and the same type of thing, but it's talking about and reaffirming the fact that, again, they were rivals, they were relative to each other. Roger himself alludes to this. It's stated in numerous data books and magazines. Here's some of that. So more confirmation of that, to don't let anybody cope their way out of the fact that they are relative. You then get another paragraph that says, if forced to weigh the lives of the old against those of the young, he would without hesitation choose the young who will shape the future. Now, of course, that's referencing the last lesson, but you could actually use that in conjunction with the moments of resolve in Hachinosu, because the situation is Garp tells Kuzan straight up, when Kuzan was kind of deliberating and thinking of the relationship him and Garp have at the beginning, questioning whether or not Garp would actually attack him and want to fight him despite the relationship. Garp says, wavering makes you weak. You cannot do that. You must show conviction. This kind of goes in line with that, where Aokiji is the old guard, so to speak. Obviously, he's younger than Garp, but he's the old guard in terms of he's no longer the future of the Marines. If he made his decision to leave, in Garp's mind, he has to protect the new gen. So his resolve for saving Kobe is going to far outweigh anything he has against Kuzan, so there's no hesitation or wavering needed. Even the Vivre card expounds on this further, saying he openly boldly voices his demands of Kuzan, leaving nothing hidden. He unwaveringly follows his own path, so no wavering from Garp, confirmed in this Vivre card. So it kind of dispels that notion that some people were saying that Garp was mentally nerfed against Kuzan, which seems to be very unlikely. And that's simply because he entrusts everything to the young Marines, and he must not waver in order to instill them their greatest source of strength. Now, with that said, unfortunately, Kuzan and Kobe do not get confirmation of conquerors like Garp, but definitely do not take this as confirmation they do not have it. Garp is a great example of somebody that's already previously had a Vivre card that did not include Conqueror's Haki, and now he does. Yamato has a Vivre card where she does not have Conqueror's Haki, yet we know she has it. Same thing could be said for Zoro. Multiple other examples like this exist, so a character not having it originally, mind you, Blackbeard and Mihawk haven't had confirmation either, does not disqualify them from having it in the future when it is later revealed in the story. So don't let anybody lie to you like that. It's just simply the same likelihood it was yesterday. Getting into Kuzan's Vivre card, we see that Kuzan got a lot of statements, again, that should be common sense, but I'm glad that they're included here, talking about his admiration for Garp, and as I mentioned in my Aokiji Garp video, the conversation he had with Smoker, where his true feelings were revealed. Does the fire of justice still burn within him? Compounded with the fact that earlier in the Vivre card it says, despite being in the darkness, joining the Blackbeard pirates, Does the justice with Kuzan still live on? His true intentions remain unknown. I think it's very clear Kuzan was very distressed with what was happening with Garp. I talk about this in multitude of videos, my Aokiji Garp video and also my revisited video that you can check out. But he has to play a part for whatever his major goal is in the end and whatever his justice system is now. We don't know these intentions, but it's very clear here that they're ambiguous for a reason. When it's all put on the table, everything will make a lot more sense. It also happens to be stated in one of Oda's select interview questions this week that Kuzan is not somebody that obeys Blackbeard blindly. He does not obey everything Blackbeard says and goes his own way and is embracing his freedom. So just because he's aligned with the Blackbeard Pirates, it does not inherently make him evil. That's also kind of talked about here, where they touch on the fact that 22 years ago, he froze his close friend who had defied the government, Saul, leaving his fate to destiny, touching on the fact that Kuzan himself has never been afraid to go his own way for what he believes. If you want to hear it from me, I think that these two things right here, they imply Conqueror's Haki. I'm not going to say, of course, that's fucking confirmation or anything, like absolutely not. I think that it's pretty obvious that Akainu and Aokiji have Conqueror's Haki, but hey, we can go this same Garp route where you guys say, hey, until it's absolutely confirmed, whatever, in due time we'll find out. Whether he has it or not though, it doesn't really matter to me because he has the power to match Conqueror's Haki clearly. You saw him clashing evenly with the Garp who's using Conqueror's Haki confirmed, all these different things, but I just think that it is very likely that Aokiji and Akainu certainly have Conquerors, as well as Kobe probably, especially considering Garp has his own counterpart in Sengoku, who is also confirmed to have Conqueror's Haki. The only two Marines thus far that have it explicitly confirmed. While on the subject of one of Oda's interview questions, we also found out some more of Cross Guild's bounties. And when we got Cross Guild's bounty hierarchy, we found out that Akainu actually has a 5 billion bounty. And that's assuming he didn't get a buff from being a special marine. So baseline, it's going to be 5 billion, could potentially be higher, but is most likely 5 billion. But either way, you have to take into account that this is an organization that should be well less funded than the world government. They have been getting criminal funding, but from a logical standpoint, I don't see them having the same kind of resources. So I'd say that these bounties should probably be inflated a bit. With that context in mind, you can make a real argument that this could be the highest bounty in One Piece. With that said, even if you didn't want to take that notion, a 5 billion bounty is something only the likes of Whitebeard and Roger have currently in the series confirmed. Dragon is probably somebody else you can throw into that category, as it was stated he was the most wanted criminal while Whitebeard was alive, which means he should have over a 5 billion as well. But leaving it to those four, I think that there's a clear portrayal there. Bounties don't necessarily equate to strength. We know this, of course, but the portrayal and the concerted effort from Oda to make that a 5 crown bounty instead of a 4 crown bounty, which would have been just as acceptable, really speaks to what Oda has already told us about Akainu. Based on strength, Akainu, if he was the main character, he would find the One Piece and get it all wrapped up in less than a year. Of course, Akainu also has some of the best scaling in the verse, if not the best, which I touch on in my live streams and various of my scaling videos. This is great information. Love to see the portrayal. Can't wait to see Akainu when he fully goes all out. Now moving on to more Kizaru information. It just keeps getting worse and worse for the Yonko fans that have tried to push a notion that Kizaru wasn't mentally conflicted and he was fully trying against Luffy and he just got his ass whooped, which was never the case. Even if we were to take all that away, like, Kizaru would still have the scaling. I talk about all that in the scaling video. But with all of these things, it's so overkill at this point. Any of these Yonko fans that still are in denial about it, it's really sad at this point, because it's like you have no stake. Like, there's no debate. There's no debate about it whatsoever. The intro paragraph for Kizaru says, as a Navy headquarters admiral known for his long-held unique sense of unclear justice, his nonchalant demeanor has always been striking. But this mission was different. The elimination of his close friend, Vegapunk. Bearing his unbearable turmoil, he set out to uphold his duty and position as Admiral Kizaru. Yet, despite his calm approach, his inner anguish could not be fully concealed. With a heavy heart, he finally raised his hand against his friend, and to this day, his sunglasses remain clouded. Absolute confirmation there. It keeps going though. A best friend with whom joyful times were shared. Ironically, they would meet again in the same place under cruelly tragic circumstances. As if to admonish his wavering, indecisive self caught in his inner conflict, he deliberately voices his mission out loud. So he had to reaffirm himself multiple times throughout. This was right before he fought Luffy, after he just dealt with Sentomaru. talking about all the flashbacks that were at play. Like, Oda made it very clear, like giving you like 20 plus fucking moments of confliction for Kizaru in this shit, where it's like, guys, it's okay to admit that Kizaru was completely conflicted in this entire arc. And then the best one that takes the cake, taking his best friend's life with his own hands, pushed his mind to the breaking point. Exactly what I said. Look, there's nothing about his body being at the breaking point. At the moment where he stabbed Vegapunk, that was the lowest and the height of his confliction. It was over at that point. Now he was wallowing in his own fucking anguish. That's when Luffy grabs him. Mind you, he grabbed him off guard, and while he was reflecting on this moment, he was going after Sanji. He didn't even understand what Luffy was doing at that point, grabbed him, and then had no will to fight anymore. Literally none. He didn't have any wounds. That's why people were questioning his wounds. It was already mentioned way back that this was a mental thing. Now it's just reinforced to the 10th degree, okay? So guys, at this point, like, I'm probably not even going to touch on this anymore on YouTube, because it's just like, it's ad nauseum. We know this. I have very thoroughly discussed all the things about Kizaru multiple times, and at this point, if somebody's still in denial, you probably shouldn't take anything they're saying as very credible, because at this point, it's invincible ignorance on their part, undeniable truths present to them. So yes, an absolute wonderful week for the Admiral Agenda. Seemed Oda had enough. Obviously, the Vivre cards aren't directly Oda, but these things all coming out in the same week is almost poetic. It's hilarious that all the things get revealed in time. We have so much more to discuss. It's only going to get better because people got to realize that these admirals have never gone all out on screen. What do you think that the reason for that is? You think that they're just never going to do it ever? No, of course it will happen eventually in due time. And when it does happen, everything gets amplified. All of their feats get better. Everything happens and people will start switching over. You already start to see it now. People saying they lost. People saying, hey, you know what? I might have to become an Admiral fan. We've known this whole time, and it's good to be vindicated on all these topics. My Admiral guys that have been with me since day one, or even if you switched over after hearing some of the arguments I've presented, I appreciate you. Keep fighting the fight. We're going to keep going. And yeah, good week. Peace.